call the meeting to order. I want the roll call. Inestino.
Present.
Patrick Kennedy.
Here.
Mark Maggi.
Here.
Mary McGoldrick.
Here.
And we don't have Meg just yet. Okay. So Patrick reminded me that the first order of business was that his sentence of being the clerk had run. He had scratched all the months in the wall of his cell, and now he should be sprung, as many of us who served in that role have done. The only trouble is, Patrick, that some of the candidates for your successor might not be with us. Mary, your hand is up.
I have by proxy a vote for Ellen Marr that she would be more than willing to become the clerk.
Perfect. I was planning to be polite yet persuasive with her, but she's ahead of the game, so that's wonderful.
She's,
So,
you will find Ellen is always ahead of the game, Rob.
I've got that already. Thank you. So I have I'm going to take that as a nomination for Ellen Marr. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Not
We
so
have a
fast.
nomination. We have a nomination. Does anyone else want to throw in just to make this a highly contested thing? Hearing none, all in favor of Ellen Marr becoming the clerk of the advisory committee, please indicate by saying aye. Inestino.
Roll call
Aye.
vote. Should we do a
Roll call vote. They all have to be roll call votes. So because we're on Zoom. Inestino.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy.
Aye.
That was
Plus.
close. Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
And Rob Hillman is an aye. So the ayes have it. So Patrick, can we impose on you one last meeting?
I got it. Already have the
thanks,
notepad out.
Excellent. Yeah, Ellen has a family wedding this coming weekend and has people flying in, which I suppose I've now memorialized forever in Cohasset's electronic archives. But let's all wish her a happy weekend and better weather than today. So the next matter on our agenda is to review the topics raised by the warrant articles. Everybody should have received a draft of the warrant late this afternoon. If you haven't, can you let me know? Otherwise, we should probably each put it on our screens and follow along. And maybe Chris can put it on a shared screen as well. I only opened it and read it through the one time prior to the meeting. But my take is that there are 2 or 3 things that may require some attention, but a lot of it is routine maintenance. So Chris, I thought maybe we would go through it with you and as we go, kind of highlight where the committee should follow up with boards and which, particularly with citizens petitions. I really do think when somebody files a citizens petition, they should be, my first impression was they should know that they should send something to advisory, even just a written request that we, a written submission or ask to come and see us. I realize, that may not be fair because people don't file citizens petitions regularly, so they may not kind of, fully understand how the whole thing goes. But when they do, I suggest I had a conversation with the chair of the select board and indicated, if they get one of them, that board gets a citizens petition, they should tell the petitioners that they should contact our board and if it's relevant, capital budget or one of the other boards with jurisdiction. So there are 2 citizens petitions that are at the end. I thought maybe we just, go through it and if there are matters that implicate any of our or concern any of our liaison assignments, we should reach out to those boards. I think there's something from the Concom. I honestly don't remember who's our Concom liaison. I'll have to find that list, or Mary, if you have that list handy. But we'll deal with that when we get to it. The first one is actually something that I probably know as much about as anybody in Mechanical has it. And that is the use of license fees, franchise fees from our cable operators. Yeah, Chris.
Just before we jump into this, for those
Yeah,
of you
I'm
who get
sorry.
a chance to meet her, Jennifer Mullen is.
Oh, I'm
joining us
sorry.
tonight.
Yeah.
No, that's all right. Jennifer is our new town accountant finance director, and there she is in your wherever she's hiding on your screen, live from her home on stormy Cape Cod. So welcome, Jennifer. Very excited to have you. Jennifer's been has an extensive experience working with complex communities, including Falmouth, where she's been for the last decade, and Hanover and Chatham. And we're very excited to have her. Her first day was yesterday. And so she's jumped right in. So so I'm not going to put her on the spot to do anything but observe us tonight. If she has any questions, she's welcome to ask them. You know, we with the turnover between Don and Jennifer, we had a little gap as Don moved further and further into his private sector goal. So his private sector new private sector gig. So we're a little slower on stuff than we normally are. I'd say a good month behind. The books are now closed for FY22. So Jennifer's now going through things and has some filings to do. We'll get a free cash number soon. I think it's a decent one. And then we'll hammer out these first articles after the first one Rob talks about. So I just want to introduce her, and you'll all get to know her a lot more in the coming months.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Coming in.
Yeah, I know that everybody on this committee, both those of us who are here and those of us who aren't here yet or aren't able to be here tonight, we relied very heavily on the work from your office. We really enjoyed working with Don, and we look forward to working with you. It's most of the advice that the advisory committee gives is based on numbers. So we're super glad you're here. Thank you. So, all right. Thank you for covering my faux pas, Chris. I should have realized that myself. But we've got in front of us the warrant. The first article it's on has to do with the transfer of cable television revenue, and it's my understanding is a required transfer. The cable companies pay the town fees that are set under the cable license, and they are designated to go to operate the local, the PEG, Public Educational and Governmental Channel, that is 143 TV. That's what it's for. I don't, we've been, most people on this call have been through this one at least once before. So at some point, I don't think we'll vote on anything tonight, but I think this one is shovel ready. When we do start voting, there's not a lot to talk about.
My hope is that Jennifer's schedule pending here, that in 2 weeks we should be able to get these in front of you. All the financial articles should be put
Good.
together.
Because that's currently our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay,
So that'd be great. So moving on to the next article, unpaid bills from prior years.
There's got to be a few, I'm afraid, between transitions in the planning department, the DPW, and the finance department. I sat through a list with my office staff the other day, and we're working to sort through what's really unpaid and what really can be applied somewhere. That said, I'm afraid there's going to be a larger number than we've seen in some time. That said, that we're going through them, and we'll have that finalized, and within a week or two. So,
I mean, unless there's one that's really unusual, if we consumed the goods or services.
well, yeah, I mean, they literally involve everything from tree work to uniforms to a couple legal bills from a law firm that not your prior law firm, but another law firm that was working with us they got stuck in the planning office for some reason and never got to my office. I don't know what happened. So,
Okay, well, we'll deal with them when there are actually numbers and things attached, unless anybody has any questions about that. Hearing none.
and then we will be putting money to stabilization funds. I don't know the amount yet. We'll put, most likely money will go. We have the first cut is into the OPEB fund, the OPEB reserve fund. So we're going to be putting money into that first, then capital, and then our general stabilization. That's the plan based on how much is available. So.
Okay.
Quick question, Rob. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary. I'm sorry.
No, so they did draw down from the Special Education Stabilization Fund last spring, is right, Jean?
Yes.
So we just need to pay special attention to that.
Yes, if they're, I don't know how, we typically, if the schools have done it, turn back like they historically have been the last few years, we generally try to apply that to the special ed fund if there's money, or roll it up a little. I know there was money taken out by vote by the select board and the school committee earlier this year, fiscal year. So I think putting some more money back to that would be a priority as well.
Yeah, according to Susan Owens' kind of year-end state of the state over at the schools, they're turning back $6,000 this year.
$6,000.
$6,000.
I think, pretty sure that's what it said. So
They did a good job of spending this year.
just for us all to be aware of.
What has it been the last couple of years?
A couple 100,000.
Okay.
But not on the agenda, so we'll take that up next time.
Let me put this.
It's agenda adjacent, Mary. I don't think we're going to go to OML jail for that one, but you're right. We'll take it up in detail. So we'll talk about the funds when we've got some numbers in there. One-time costs.
So there's 6 projects here. And again, I can have formal reports on all of these for all of you. They're a little all over the map, which is typically what these are. The first one, we've had a compost pile. Anyone who goes to the RTF regularly knows the compost pile has been growing for the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we don't have a place. People have not been taking it away anywhere near the rate that they deposit things, and it's now unwieldy, and we have to get rid of it. And it's going to cost money to literally ship it away to someone who take it and compost it at their private facility. So that's the estimate right now to get rid of the compost pile. So it'll be fresh, and we have a little maneuvering room at the ITF. There are plans to develop a new site, but it's going to require Concom approval. It's on another section of the DPW land, but it's going to involve some permitting. So before we can actually use it, the select board has asked us to look at a customer relations management platform, kind of an app to report outages or questions or challenges, and we've identified something that we'll be talking more about shortly, and this would fund that for a year. It would basically be like an electronic portal for people to plug into government for questions or concerns or
Does that, Chris, just if you can make a note, when we do talk about that, can we also talk about the labor cost that'll be pertinent to that function?
the hope
It's
is
one
that-
thing to spend $7,500 a year to get a platform, but then you got to pay somebody to.
No,
Yeah.
actually, we're not going to pay anybody extra for this. No, the goal of this is to actually streamline work. By putting this on an electronic database, we hope to do better reporting, more robust reporting, and maybe save people time. That's the hope. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing that will be perfect, but that's historically how these things have worked. Once they get implemented, instead of making random phone calls, people can actually go on the app, pop in their question, send a picture, and boom, it can instantly be routed to the right place. So the theory is it'll save time in offices. That's the goal.
No, if that's the case, that's great.
So we'll.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No.
Did anybody? Jean, do I see a hand?
No, not on this.
Oh, I do. I'm sorry, your picture on my screen is less than the size of a postage stamp, so I don't always know quite what I'm looking at.
It's about the same
I'm
on
sorry.
mine too.
The,
Chris, go ahead.
So the the assessor every so often has to go through a more robust recertification process for the revaluation. I'm sorry for the town, and we're going into that cycle. And this is industrial commercial, really. That's where she has to spend a little more time. And there's some new properties in town. So this will pay for a couple of things that are just one time. They weren't baked in the budget purposely, but again, there was a miscommunication between the prior finance director and Mary Quill, our assessor, about the amount of money needed. So this will cover that and get her all the resources she needs to finish that revaluation.
Does that mean labor, Chris?
It's mostly consult. Yeah, some of it is Patrick, I believe, is specialized folks who do specialized industrial assessments. I think some of it is some kind of software too. So, but again, I'll get something more formal from Mary about these.
Thank you.
So I know she has it done already. Playground. So these facilities folks, the next three are all facilities. The facilities are going to take a more robust role in maintenance of our outdoor facilities, not just our buildings. And the next three implicate that or feed into that. There's some various playground fixes that to be. A couple of swings are missing. Some chains have to be replaced. A couple of pieces of. This is not replacing like major slides or something, but it's stuff that has to be done, and we're going to have to start budgeting for it better now going forward. The next is crack sealing the tennis courts. There's not a short term. There's conversations about a bigger field and court proposal. I don't think that'll hit the town for public review until the spring, to annual town meeting, so probably the early winter. So in the interim, funding this to get that cleaned up in the spring is really important. The courts are in a place that they need some remediation, or they're not going to be usable at all, and that would not be good for the high school.
Mary? I see your
One
hand.
question for you, Chris, in terms of the facilities items and your comment about how they were going to take a more robust role maintaining those. Was that in somebody else's bucket before, or is there just more of a focus now on somebody owns it and it's part of the job description now? And
yeah, so what I think is, so the field and court study kind of underscored for us that we've got, we're doing a lot more than we used to, and the challenge is that we used to be just a handshake, or this guy knew what to do and go over here and do it, and that wasn't just happening anymore. We've had a turnover of staff, and we're doing a lot more intensive internal building maintenance, which is what we should be doing, right? So this kind of has fallen a little bit by the wayside, and quite frankly, the rec folks are doing a lot more programming, and they don't do this, right? And they're not, it's not in their wheelhouse to do some of this. So somebody used to say, well, I'll call Mark Kelly, he'll take care of this, right? Well, those days are over. We don't do that anymore. And so we have to, it's clear the field and court study underscore, we need to formalize a role. In fact, we are talking informally about the potential creation of a new position in facilities that would do this as a primary, and also potentially work with schools if they're interested to do field and court maintenance for everybody and to be the primary person. Because I think we're at the point where we need to do that. Having it as like a side piece of someone's job isn't working anymore. I've been, last year I got calls from the baseball people. We had to scramble to get the field raked so they could have the high school, field done. And that should be much more formalized. So,
okay.
And that's what the field rake is. So it's a piece of equipment that we don't own, that we can't get our hands on, that would allow just as a rental, right? That allows you to rake the fields, particularly the baseball fields. That's really for the baseball fields. It's for raking the infields, not for the Little League fields, for the Beachwood, for the field at Milliken, because they need to be raked periodically. I mean, you see it, the major leagues do it all the time. We're not going to do it quite that intensely, but right now we're not doing it at all. So this will be a piece of equipment that will be used to maintain the infields, and it's far less expensive than somebody getting hurt or all the complaints we get from the poor kids and parents who are trying to play on them. So those are the one-time cost items. Does anyone have any questions about any of them at this point?
Jean?
Do you recall off the top of your head, Chris, sorry, how much the study cost for the court and field?
Fields and courts.
Because I get a lot of questions from neighbors about how we approved this, and we approved a study.
So there's been public meetings about the study. It was Activitas did all the work. It's on the website. There's all of their initial findings, their supplementary findings are up on the website. I think I'm coming to your meeting. So Michelle's going to the next rec meeting, which I believe is the same night as yours. So, and having a conversation about what they're going to line up for as the next step. Milliken is, I think, where the focus is right now, getting upgrades to Milliken, the courts, the fields, maybe expand the fields, put in some more parking. I think that's where the focus is right now, because I think that's going to be the easiest lift. Doing things on school property is problematic now because of all the conversations about upgrades and where things are going to go and what the
I
process.
was just curious how much the study cost, because the tennis courts in particular, Francesca's 28 and she played tennis in 9th grade and they were a mess then. So
We've been talking about this now.
Complaints.
Pre-pandemic, Gene, this was teed up and then the pandemic came and everything kind of stopped. So we're 2 full years behind where we hoped to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the court study, which was the first thing we were talking about.
Yeah.
Morphed into a bigger conversation. So again, I'm hoping that something more formal will come out in the spring for the springtime meeting. So
Okay.
the tennis programs are great. I mean, they're really, really well used. The high school programs for girls and boys.
Sorry, I'm capturing something rolling down the wall.
Okay.
So capital, there are 6 projects that are on the capital.
Can I ask you a question, Chris,
Yeah.
before you go through all of them? What's the source of this list? Is it requests from the departments themselves?
These are all internal things that had a time sensitivity to them.
Okay.
And they're going to capital tomorrow night. So we're right on top of that. So for example, the electric vehicles, the leases are running out at the end of this year. While we can get money to lease new vehicles, there are no vehicles to lease. So we decided the most cost-effective answer here was to buy the leases out, which will give us those 3 vehicles for $42,000, and we'll have them until they stop working. So those are the fully electric Leafs that we have, and they're in use all the time. Facilities uses them, staff uses them, and the elder affairs folks use them as well. So it's the most cost-effective answer. Police radios, the police won a grant for $50,000. We have a one quarter match. That's for $48,000. So that $12,000 will cover our share of that grant, which we just won. The Osgood School vestibule is something that came out of the security analysis the schools recently did. They want to change how the entry to Osgood works. And I think this number is still a little bit in flux, but it's been a major ask of the school committee or at least the school committee leadership to do something with the vestibule at Osgood. The generator, it's something that's just been a long time coming. We need a better, more robust generator at police and fire. We just do. What's there is not enough, and that building cannot lose power. It can't. The next one is money that should have been allocated last year and was not. So for whatever reason, the allocation was cut. It wasn't enough, and this is the remaining money that will finalize to work at the DPW building. This is the building where that there's never been really true heat and air conditioning in some of the areas, particularly the locker rooms, the bathrooms, and the office area. And this was necessary so that we can really occupy the buildings comfortably for our workers. The last one, the Beachwood water main's already been approved. Unsurprisingly, the bids came back high. So this is money that'll plug that gap. And this is going to come out, it's going to come out of water stabilization. And the plan would be that free cash in an equivalent or larger amount will go into the capital stabilization fund before this article, at the earlier article, to cover these costs, the other costs. So any questions of me on these? We don't normally put the capital that comes on in the fall is stuff that's time sensitive, or has, I won't say an emergency nature, but a more, it's a timing thing. So, okay. Again, capital starts that conversation tomorrow night. So by your next meeting, they'll have recommendations, I expect.
Question,
Mike's
Chris.
So
Chris,
Yeah.
if you say there's no electric vehicles available for lease, so our leases are up and we have an option to buy at the end of the lease term.
we do.
So the options are buy or turn the cars back, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've decided to opt for the buy. Because there's nothing else to lease. If there was something else to lease, we get the new ones again. Because we can most likely, we likely could win another state grant. The problem is there's nothing to lease. So, and there's nothing, by the way, for that matter, there's nothing to buy. So.
Did our operating budget for 2023 reflect that these 3 vehicle leases would end sometime during the year?
We were planning to do something and build in a grant. And again, last year it became obvious there was no chance. We've talked to the dealership that we got these from through a state. It was all through a big state. It was a state bid. And there was nothing in the pipeline. So we made a decision that we would buy them. Since there was no realistic way. And since it was a one-time thing and it's a capital item, we decided to go through this process.
I guess my question's a little bit more refined than that. In
Okay.
other words, when we set the 2023 operating budget, did we include a line item or whatever embedded in whatever line item it was, 12 months of lease payments for?
Oh, no. No, the grant paid for 3 years of lease up front when we won
The
it.
grant paid for 3 years up front.
So these have been basically free vehicles.
Gotcha. So there's no operating line item, budget item that would then be accredited back towards this or be reduced because of this.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the question you were asking.
Thank you.
Yeah, we won a grant that I don't know if it may have only covered 90% of them, but whatever it was, we paid them all up front. It was less expensive to do that. It was only, at most, it was a couple thousand each vehicle, and that was done 3 years ago. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
I think it's a matter of policy. The committee is strongly in favor of line items that work that way.
Sure.
So go ahead, Chris. I'm
we
sorry.
like free. We like zero line items too when they're prepaid. This is still.
Can I just ask a question about the vehicles real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Has anyone done like a long-term cost analysis on the ownership of aging 10? No one has a 10-year-old electric car. And I don't speak this as an anti-electric car guy. I think my wife's next car is going to be an electric car, but we're going to lease it for this very fear that I'm worried it's going to turn into like an old iPhone where it's bricked and no one's going to have a classic electric car like we have classic internal combustion cars, right? I'm worried these things are going to turn into bricks and we're going to be left holding something that's worthless.
I understand that concern. We did not originally intend to own them for that very reason. That said, we have a need for them for at least another couple. We think based on the maintenance that they get checked regularly, and there's really we should get it. And we don't use them. I mean, they're hardly used. I mean, you're right. They drive around town. They have 4-digit mileage on them. Okay, after 3 years. I mean, we're not talking about cars that have 50,000 miles on them. So, and they're regularly charged, and we keep them maintained. So we think we could get at least a couple of years of life out of them, which would then, effectively amortize, 3 vehicles, $42,000 for a couple of years.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
If we were paying the lease cost and then buying it off the lease, I'd be more worried. Being that we didn't pay the lease cost, if we're only buying it off the lease, then you're right. Over the course of 6 years, again, even if it's a paperweight, after 6 years, it was probably still worth it. So that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, but your question is a good one, and it's one we thought about. And I am concerned about going forward with these. You're right. So once the supply chains open up and we can hopefully release them, we will get out of the ownership, because our guys can even maintain them, right? Our mechanics can maintain certain things and oil. There's no oil changes, right?
There's no fluids. These are all brakes and blades. That's it. Yeah.
Right. The only fluids they put in there are windshield wiper, right? So, it's a new world, and we're going to start buying. By the way, we are going to start acquiring hybrid vehicles, which are a little easier to maintain.
Yeah.
For the police, and we are looking at the potential of buying electric pickups for facilities starting next year. So that'll be a conversation that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm all for electric vehicles. I'm just all for leasing them. I've only ever bought cars in my life, but I would only ever lease an electric car because what the future of these things look like and battery replacement costs are a bit scary, because they could be effectively totaled with a dead battery.
Yes.
And I say this as someone who firmly believes in an electric vehicle future.
I think the whole ownership cycle of electric vehicles are going to be different. I agree, and we haven't figured that out yet. So
Okay. But no, again, if we're just buying it off the lease and we didn't actually pay for the lease, it's a much easier justification. So thanks.
Okay. And so CPC is going to meet next week, and there are 2 projects coming in for them for sure, and maybe a third. The library is looking to do an amphitheater on the side, like a performance area amphitheater on the Sawyer Street side of their property. There's an open lawn and a hillside. They've just gotten some very nice design plans. The library trustees are very much in favor. I think the whole project's about $300,000, and they're gonna 350 to 350,000, give or take. And they're looking to, I think they're gonna be looking for about half from CPC and then fundraise and donate, get the rest from fundraising and grants. But this is going for CPC next week. They did a preliminary presentation last week about it. There's been talk, I don't know if this is going to come in or not, but for a lacrosse wall, I guess it's a wall that you bounce lacrosse balls off and catch them with your stick. So we do not have one in Cohasset, and it's something that may be an ask by the lacrosse club that's on here as a placeholder. Beachwood playground improvements too. That's a little more robust than what I was just talking about. I'm using that word robust a lot tonight. There's a group at Beachwood that would like to upgrade the playground, and they're in the process of putting together a proposal, working with the town that'll be presented to CPC. And I don't know all the specifics of that, but you will once it gets to CPC. And the goal of that would be to get that installed in the spring, providing supply chains work. Hence the reason for it being on the warrant in the fall.
Okay.
I don't really have any answers for any of this, so the next couple are.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, we're basically just issue spotting it now, so we won't be, we'll know what's coming, but, so revolving funds.
So I have 2, and so this one, we've always done vaccinations for flu and stuff, and we just kind of build it in the budget and we get reimbursed. It's becoming more complicated. We're doing a few more of them, and the insurance reimbursements are getting, the accounting for these is becoming a little more complicated. And we've been doing COVID boosters and stuff too, which is great. It's great to do. So that said, health and our prior accountant was tearing his limited hair out, tracking these things. And so the conversation was, why don't we just create a revolving fund? Now, I haven't had a conversation with Jennifer about this yet. It does seem to make sense because this is a very separate little world, right? We get the vaccine, we get money in reimbursement from the state and from the feds and wherever else to give them. And then we get insurance reimbursement, which we have to process. So keeping that in a little revolving fund makes a lot more sense, I think, than baking into the general fund. And that said, we'll have more conversations about that. The other revolving fund that's being discussed, and again, I'm not sure if this is the right format, but there was a nationwide opioid settlement. I think everyone's probably seen. The state attorney general of Massachusetts was a leader in it. And as a result, we took part through the attorney general's office, and we are part of the major settlement. So we're getting over the course of 15 years, like a couple $100,000, but it's in 20,000 and 30,000 increments in any given year. It's normally settlement money, as I understand it, goes back in the general fund. That said, this is really supposed to be, by its terms, targeted to certain purposes. So the hope is that we could put it into a separate fund, and it would be primarily used, or really exclusively used, for safe harboring type activities and activities with the Board of Health for not necessarily drug treatment per se, but in Cohasset more activities that would keep kids and adults away from drug use and things like that. So, but the goal would be to keep it out of the general fund budget, because it's supposed to be dedicated to a very specific purpose. And it's not really that much money, but we don't want to lose it either and get it lost in the fund. So there's a wetland protection Viola update. I don't have it here. You'll have it shortly. I have to get a final version from council. I don't know if this will be controversial or not. It has to do with vernal pools and riverside embankments or something, I think. Vernal pools, by the way, are seasonal pools that pop up typically in the spring. You hear the frogs chirping and stuff like that, then they go away. We have them scattered around Cohasset, so they are protected sites. And I guess there's a lot of, since people are starting to intrude into areas where they historically never would have, because land is more valuable than it ever was, I think it's becoming more of an issue, and I think the Conservation Commission wanted to better define it, so they've been working with council on some tighter definitions. And again, that would be something that Charlotte and the Conservation Commission can explain when it's all baked.
Go ahead, Chris. I thought you were done.
No,
On the
on that, I'm done on that. Do you have a question on
Yeah,
that?
on the Concom matters, anybody have any questions? I just have one observation is that as a committee, when we make a decision whether we think that article should be backed, we should be prepared to articulate our reasons at town meeting. We saw what happened the last time a zoning and planning type article went up, and if it's going to affect land, people who have a contrary interest will show up and they'll say things, and they may have excellent points, or they may not. But if we back it, we should be prepared to back it. And if we don't, we don't. But Patrick, go ahead.
As a former chair of the Conservation Commission, I think I could probably handle it once we get to the details on that.
So delegated. Thank you. Thank you for I had forgotten that you were. Thank you.
This would be an amendment of our bylaw, our town bylaw, which is more restrictive probably than state law here. So we'll need to review it in connection with what state law says on vernal pools and riverfront areas. But
Patrick, would you be comfortable, instead of dragging somebody in here from Concom in the limited number of meetings that we have and having them explain everything to the committee, could you maybe talk to them and let me know if you'd be able to
yes,
translate from Concom to English?
absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, then we'll be prepared for that, because I really see that as really one of our key functions, not just to cast a vote and say, oh, that's what we thought when we were meeting in a Zoom meeting that nobody watched, but to be prepared to stand up at town meeting and explain to town meeting why we're giving it the advice that we're giving it. So good, excellent. I'm sorry, Chris, you were
You're
to
all right. So the next one, so there's I think as anyone who lives in town knows, there's horrible cell service along the northeast corner of town, basically running from west corner or all the way down to Sandy Beach and beyond. That whole northeast corner of town is Patrick lives in it, so he can testify to that. And we've been working to identify ways to improve coverage down there. We just added an emergency call box at Rocky Beach. I don't know if you saw the little announcement we had on the webpage. So it's down there. So that's a 24/7 answer for anyone at the beach and anyone in the immediate neighborhood. If they have a problem, they can get down to that. It's something. It's definitely something for the beach, because the beach is a dead zone. The other thing we've been looking at is siting a tower. Not necessarily building a tower, just finding land for it and then getting private companies to bid and put one up and pay us. So there's land. If anyone, Rob is probably more familiar with it than most of us. There's an old radar tower kind of tucked away in that park that was used.
yes, there is.
And in that general area, not that exact site, but in that general area has been identified as a good location for a cell tower. So that said, the land was given to the town upon the death of Levi Wheelwright in 1865 or 1864. He died in the Civil War of some disease of malaria or something down in Louisiana. So he donated the land to the town. I have to give Ron Menard a lot of credit. He did a lot of historical digging to find out how the town acquired this and what the regulations are. Council has said, while it's highly unlikely, Levi Wheelwright's ancestors are going to come after us if we stick a cell tower on the land, providing town meeting approves it at all, is that it's probably good to get the state to formally authorize this through what's called the Article 97 proceeding, which allows land to be that's considered parkland to be used for non-park purposes. So this would allow that to happen. Now, again, you have to see the maps, see the impact. It's in an area where it shouldn't impact the park and it shouldn't impact neighbors particularly. And there's a real public safety issue up there. Now, if the town doesn't want to do it, that's fine. But we've been asked to identify a location. This is it. And I think it would make a dramatic improvement to the cell coverage area along the whole coastal area, which is really a bad place. So questions of me about this?
I can say that it takes some genuine doing to get to that tower. And Chris is right. I've slept in that park more times than I care to think about because the Boy Scouts own the campsite in there. And the cell tower is I think I've been there twice. It's really, it's so remote, it won't, well, the tower, it's an old radio tower. I think they used it to test the radios that they used to build at the plant in Cohasset. That's what it was built for, so I was told by some of our old timers. And also, if there isn't a plaque somewhere concerning Levi Wheelwright, there should be a plaque somewhere regarding Levi Wheelwright. That's a great story. I've never heard that before. So
I never had either. So this is what happens when necessity breeds historical.
Yeah, that's great.
Historical.
So we'll Jane.
Where exactly is this?
Wheelwright Park. It's way up in the back of the park, kind of towards Holly Hill Farm.
If
Okay,
you were to go into Wheelwright Park from the Forest Avenue entrance.
Yep.
And walk in about 10 minutes or so and take a right and go down through the trails that are marked and then go
I've
off
never
the
done
trails
that,
that are marked
sorry.
through, and you'll die of tick bites and everything else. But somewhere down there in between, two stands of trees, there's also some like a couple of abandoned cars and some other nastiness down there. At
Well,
least there
as
used to
long
be.
as
Maybe
it's-
it was hauled out.
As long as
But
it's
it's
remote enough.
completely, it's as remote
Far
a
enough away
spot
from
as there is in
neighbors.
the town of Cohasset. Seriously, it's as remote a spot as there is in that part of the town of Cohasset. You can't get there from here.
It's not in the exact location, but it's in the general location, the same general.
Okay.
location.
Middle of nowhere.
And also kind of nearly, it's very close to the Holly Hill Farm property too. So I don't know if the plan is to, we'll have to see what we can do. But so the first step would be for town meeting to authorize, action with the state. So
Okay, well, I don't want to,
that's an unusual. So we're getting a history lesson and we're getting, modern technology all in one article. So that's that. So the next one is actually interesting. So as part of our police negotiations, which you'll set an executive session. Well, you don't have to set an executive session, I don't think, but you could. You can set an executive session. I could brief you on the settled contracts or about to be settled contracts. Among the deals with the police is we're going to get out of civil service. They want to get out of civil service. We give them a little incentive to get out of civil service, and they're going to walk around alongside us and petition the state to get out of civil service. So this is an exciting move. It's going to allow us vastly more flexibility to hire and to promote, and also to be clear, all the officers are still protected by civil service. All the current people don't lose that protection. Although it's really kind of superfluous to everything else they have. But it will allow the town to be a lot more flexible in its hiring going forward, and more modern, quite frankly, and also allow the promotional process to be more modern. So, but again, so the town got into this because town meeting approved it in, I think, 1921. I'll give more details to that. So you have to get out the same way you went in. So since town meeting approved civil service in like 1920 something, we have this town meeting that has to authorize to get out, and then you go to the legislature for a home rule petition to get out. That's how it works. That's my understanding.
okay.
Questions? Okay.
Any other towns successfully done this?
Yes, I saw a number of people in the region have started to do this. That said, there's been some hangups at the state level. Some state senator has been adamantly opposed to anyone leaving civil service. So apparently there's been a real slowdown at the state level on this. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yes, a number of people have gotten out of it. And
So it's past the towns, but not the state.
yeah, states approved it. The state has
States
approved
approved, okay.
it. But in the last year or so, I'm told it's gotten a little slower because,
Gotcha.
so that said, the police are right alongside us. They want out as much as we do. And we negotiated. So I expect if they're alongside us, we should have less problems at the state level. That's my expectation. So looks like Jennifer fell away. I'm gonna bring her back in. Okay. Going back to. Okay. There are cell antennas on the water tower. I think it's called Turkey Hill. Is that the one behind the high school? I always confuse the names. I'm sorry. Is that
No,
Turkey
that's
Hill or Turkey Hill?
Bear, that's
Turkey
Bear
Hill.
Hill.
Yeah.
So that's Bear Hill. So there are cell towers on that tank. They're up for renewal, AT&T and Verizon. So this would just extend them for another 10 years. The money goes right to the water department and it helps keep rates down to the extent it helps keep rates down. So what they do get revenue from it. And they're good locations. It also improves cell service in that whole area of town. Because they're very high. At least that one in particular is very high. And now, so those are the ones, those are the official articles. There are 2 citizens petitions, as Rob has mentioned. One is from the neighbors of King Street who would like a sidewalk. So their petition is to have the town appropriate funds for a feasibility study to plan sidewalks and traffic calming and public safety measures. Now, there are, I knew that they had submitted some materials back in the summer. We met with them again. The challenge with this is they haven't asked for any specific amount of money. And so I'm going to have to ask Brian Joyce to figure out what a study might cost. That street, we're talking about between Beachwood and 3A. While the town has we've discovered a fairly wide right of way, it's filled with lots of things. People have put fences and trees and cobblestones and stone walls. Plus there's wetlands, you go right by Lily Pond and all of that. So I don't know how complicated it would be to build. That said, this request is to fund a study. They're going to have to ask for a specific amount of money. I do not believe the committee can approve an open-ended appropriation. So a number will have to be attached to this. I know the select board is considering what to do, whether or not to float a number out there, so town meeting understands that there's a cost to this. So I'm working with Brian and Joyce in Public Works to figure out what a good estimate of a study of this might be. And when I say a study, it's also to do planning and actual engineering. So that's his petition. I'm working with the select board to get them in front of the select board, perhaps on the 18th. So you're all welcome to attend that if that happens, or you can have them come in separately. That's how it works. I'm sorry, not the 18th, the 17th.
I'm sorry, Chris, can you repeat that? Who's meeting with who on the 17th?
So we I'm sorry, 5th, 4th.
I think it would be the
18th.
18th.
I'm sorry, it's the 18th. So
Yeah.
the select board is going to have them in front of the citizen petition. The petitioners will present in front of the select board at some point. We're tentatively going to do the 18th or the 25th. So if you want to be, again, your committee can have it separately. You can say, hey, petitioners, come in and talk to us separately. Or you could do it jointly with the select board if you want. Whatever works.
I mean, while we're here, does anybody have strong feelings about that either way? I have an opinion, but
My opinion is that we should not do it jointly with the select board because I think this is so preliminary. We don't even have a number assigned with it yet. I would wait to see how this develops. This could be pulled. This may not go anywhere.
Well, it's not going to, so it has to be on the warrant, right? The citizens have filed it, it can't come off the warrant. Whether or not they fully advocate for it, I can't tell you. But they did take the time to put it on the warrant.
Well, I wouldn't schedule anything for us until we have a number.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, we can all watch the select board meeting, then, presumably they'll ask intelligent questions and we can go from there. So, okay. Carry on.
So the last article is also a citizen petition, and that is this navigation bylaw. And that even though it's Barbara Whipf, it's actually Tim Davis has been the lead petitioner on this. So I expect that he'll be the one leading this charge. So and again, just procedurally, the select board is going to have a full public meeting on this at Wilka Commons, most likely 2 weeks from tonight, which is the night. It's a Wednesday. It's because there's no other dates that work at Wilka Commons. So it'll likely be the 19th of October. It's the tentative plans. So where the petitioners will get a chance to present, the public will get a chance to give comment, and any other interested parties, whether they're situated or any other place, will have the opportunity to speak if they so choose. That's the tentative plans for that one. There were 350 plus signatures on that one. So there was a lot of whipping, or a lot of work done to get support for that. In sum and substance, it relies on a 1953 state act, which on its face gives the town of Cohasset jurisdiction over areas outside the corporate borders of Cohasset, but within the borders of the state. So it doesn't give any meets and bounds or anything else. It's just there. So this bylaw was created to work through that, to give the town, to purport to give the town jurisdictional control on the surface waters.
Police
Basically,
powers, right? Police
Yeah.
powers.
well, we have police power, so that the and enforce the general laws out there already, and they have since 1920 something. There was an act giving the police the power to cross county lines, and I think that came later anyway. But there's a 1920 something act that allows the police to enforce drinking or speeding or whatever. Probably moonshining back then. That's probably what generated that. Who knows what was going on in Bailey's Beach back then? So Bassett's Beach, I'm sorry. So this would govern the area outside the breakwater, basically, that whole area, the whole outer harbor, which is really within the corporate borders of the town of Situate. So the petitioners are pushing this, and I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about what this might mean. I can tell you that Situate's are displeased by this act. I don't know where this will end up. And just procedurally, so even if this gets approved by the state, let's say town meeting approves it, the Attorney General's office still has to vet it. So so we don't know what would happen with that. And again, I'm not giving an opinion one or the other. I'm just giving you a process here. So that's, I think, hearing the petitioners, you can have them come in again some evening to talk to all of you. This, either way, this is going to the town meeting floor. So I can answer what I can.
Mary?
So as I understand it, because we did sign it in our household, the kind of the net result of this would be regarding the proposed oyster farms. Is that not correct?
Well, again, I'm not going to speak for the petitioners, but I think it's fair to say that in their public comments that the oyster farm potential has motivated this action. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I understand. Again, I'm not speaking for them, but from what I've seen and heard, it seems to be what's motivated this.
I mean, I personally just, because I hadn't heard kind of the other part of that, it's interesting if we're proposing a bylaw that would give us jurisdiction over waters that are not technically in our town, how perhaps our adjacent community would feel about that. So just kind of interesting.
I think it's a very mellow word. Interesting.
Well, I'm Switzerland.
Charged up.
And I am. I'm professional Switzerland, right? That's my.
Okay.
But I do. This is going to generate a lot of heat if it hasn't already. I think it has. And again, it's going to be on the warrant regardless. It does say, by the way, if you notice the article, it says that there's no known cost. I think it's a pretty sure bet that if this gets enacted, that Situate or someone in Situate will sue. So, and I'm not trying to drum up litigation. I'm just telling you the vibe I'm feeling. That said, the select board is going to have a Wilka Commons sized separate night hearing on this alone, or not a hearing, like an opportunity for petitioners to present their case. What the select board chooses to do is, I couldn't tell you at this point. They're going to hear it. I don't know if they're going to take a position on it or not.
Well, this also seems to be the sort of thing that we should have an opinion about and be prepared to defend that opinion. Our harbor liaison is Fran. I'll try and reach out to him and see, what he knows and if he's, interested in taking a lead on it or wants some assistance. But, I think that, yeah, I mean, reasonable minds perhaps can differ, but, as a committee, I think, our job is to have, well, I said this earlier, we need to give advice, so we'll be prepared to do it. There isn't a ton of time. There aren't a ton of meetings between now and when this thing goes to print. What's the drop dead date for this warrant?
The first week of
Chris? First week of November. So we have meetings on the 19th and the 26th. The second is probably too late.
It's possible, I mean, the select board's final cut at this is the first, that's their last meeting before the 15th. So they're gonna meet the 11th, the 18th, the 25th, and the 1st. You could probably, I mean, again, I'm not encouraging you to, but if you had to go to the second to make a final recommendation on something, I think you probably could if you had to.
All right.
And
We'll see
the
what
reason
we
it's
can get
tight
done.
is because of Thanksgiving, and it has to be in people's hands the Monday after Thanksgiving, and we really can't screw around with printing and stuff. So we can't be late. It has to be in everyone's houses 2 weeks in advance.
Oh, gosh, certainly. Okay, well, we'll see what we can get done on the 19th and the 26th. I think the important thing is to kind of stay on task. Blow through the ones that are sort of obvious, subject to anybody's, desire to learn more about them. And then focus on what we need to have something to deliver on. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, observations about the draft warrant? No?
So the other
Okay.
thing I'd add, I think we will strive to be completely ready for 2 weeks from tonight to give you as much as possible. So you want to hear, all the financial articles. Well, again, I'm not going to. Jennifer tells me it's impossible. We'll do what we can. The financial articles, and then the revolving funds and all of those. So we should be able to get all of those together. You probably kind of want to have a presentation from conservation. And again, I also know you don't want to meet 4 hours for 4 hours. So
Yeah, I think with that one, we had discussed having Patrick, kind of
Got it.
take care of that for us. I don't know whether that's, we'll see, but we'll have to make some decisions. I'll talk to Mary. Obviously, if anybody on the committee feels like, boy, we really need more about X, let us know and we'll make it happen.
CPC and capital budget and CPC do fairly quick work. Those might be ready for you by the 19th as well. So we'll see.
And historically, we've tended to agree with both of them, particularly CPC, but capital generally also. So those might be fairly short work. I think I know more about electric cars now than I did an hour ago. So, we've covered some of those basics. Mary, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Chris, did you say Capital was starting to hear some of this tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night. Yeah, they're gonna look, I think, at all 5 of those requests tomorrow night. So.
Okay, I'm curious, and I'm sure Jean is too, especially because we were doing all the security upgrades to the schools during our tenure on the school committee. And I was just quickly looking through the end of the year report from the schools, and that vestibule wasn't on anything. So they haven't requested that before, I guess.
It's post. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the terrible tragedy in Texas.
Uvalde.
Yes.
Okay.
It's post Uvalde. So.
I know when we were redoing the other lobbies, that was the one, if I recall, Jean, that wasn't the way they want it. It was just problematic with the initial design of the school.
Exactly. You have to walk fully into the building and
Yeah.
have access to every part of it, the way it's designed. And we talked a lot about changing that design and how much it was going to cost to do it.
Okay.
And no action was ever taken.
I don't know that there's fully defined plans or not. That's the one that's a little bit. It's the biggest ask, but that's the one that's a little less defined, I think.
Yeah, okay, so we can tune in and hear what they say tomorrow night.
Anything
Okay.
else, Jennifer, do you feel comfortable that in the next 2 weeks, you can put me to the wheel and make me give you everything you need to get this done?
Yes, I do. I started looking. Yeah, I think I should be able to do that. I started looking at things this week. As you know, everything's completely new for me. But yeah, I'm pretty confident I'll be able to have it done.
And again, so as time permits, you and I will chat about the revolving funds and stuff like that. I mean, you're on a ton of things. It's, the free cash number is the big one that everything else kind of falls from. The number is, I think, solid. I don't have a final number yet. That said, I think it's solid, and we should be able to fund everything we need to. The unpaid bills are really the other one that's complicated. We got to sort that through. So, okay. Thank you all very much. Oh, Meg's here. I'm gonna let her.
Yeah, please do.
She's in. I think she's
I'm in. Apologies for my tardiness
in.
and my video not working.
You missed pretty much all the interesting parts, but
That was my plan.
it was all by way of preview. If you look in your inbox around late this afternoon, we got the first draft warrant. So we really just went over everything and talked about what we can expect. There are no votes. There's none of that. If you're interested in any of it, you can call Mary or me. We can catch you up a little bit. But
Sounds good.
we
I did see that. I
anything
reviewed it.
substantive. Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank
Chris filled some things in, and discussed some issues, but no votes, nothing substantive. So the liaison assignments is the next agenda item. I've left that as kind of a standing agenda item. In case anyone has anything they'd like to report to the committee regarding work with any of the other committees with which they're liaising, if that's the right form. I expect that's going to be more of a thing coming into Springtown meeting with the budget. But if anybody has anything, now's your time. Meg, I see your hand.
Yeah, I actually just had a question. And this is probably a question more for Chris Senior, but where are the recordings to the meetings? Because on occasion I can't make the meetings of my liaison assignments, and I would love to be able to catch up with their-
YouTube.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. The town has a YouTube channel, and they're all there. So
you know
can-
how quickly they get added?
the goal is to turn them around within 24 hours.
Oh,
So
okay. All right. So I'll search there then. Okay. Thank
provided
you.
the recording was clean. Sometimes they get screwed up, but
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So we have some minutes. Patrick had sent them around. Patrick, would you mind kind of walking us through what we should be looking at? And,
Sure. We have 3 sets of minutes to look at and approve, hopefully. The first is the meeting of April 5th, 2022. Those were circulated in emails to the committee. That was circulated to the committee on Sunday, 3 days ago. Can't remember the date, October 2nd. Email from me to all committee members attached April 5th and July 13th minutes.
I saw those. Let me just get them in front of me. I'm sorry, what was that date again, Patrick?
The first one is April 5th.
No, I meant the date of your email.
Oh, Sunday, the 2nd. 9:47 p.m.
Okay, so the first one is April
5th.
Fifth.
a second here. Thank you. Okay, we have the April 5th minutes. Any, before we move them, any questions, anybody? I mean, just anybody have anything to point out? I think they're very thorough. Hearing none, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the advisory committee meeting minutes from April 5th, 2022.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Was that Mary that seconded that?
Yes,
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
yes,
Meg Wheeler,
I was not present, so I will abstain.
okay, and Rob Hillman is an aye. So, good. And then the next set.
July 13th. Those are circulated on the same email. October 2nd.
Okay, give them. Budget transfers. Okay, does anybody have any preliminary questions or observations? A motion, Ben?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the advisory committee for July 13th, 2022.
Okay, second.
I'll second again.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to roll call vote. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
I was absent, so we'll abstain.
Okay, Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. All right. There was a third set, Patrick.
Yes,
you say?
third set was circulated yesterday, separate email. Those are the September 21, 2022 minutes.
What's the timestamp of that email, Patrick? I just.
Hold on a
my
second, I'm
box is
trying to
ridiculous.
find it, actually.
There it
Seven.
is. Is it?
49.
7:49. That's Tuesday? 7:49, that's correct.
Yeah, yesterday.
The 4th at 7:49. There it is. Like 3 pages of emails from that day. Okay, so this is September 21, 2022.
Correct.
God, we were perilously up to date. All right. Any discussion? Pretty simple is basically the.
Yep.
All right, a motion, perhaps,
I'll make the motion.
standing.
Second,
Make me
Oh,
do some
did
cutting and pasting in those minutes.
Yeah,
We're
no,
changing it, we're changing it up.
It's the
Mary has
last day,
moved,
Patrick.
Mark.
Come on.
Mark has seconded, so any further discussion of these sets of minutes? Hearing none, we'll have a vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
I was not present at that meeting.
okay,
so
abstain.
abstain.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
I was also not present, so I will abstain.
I thought not, and Rob Hillman is an aye. Which I think we have a majority of a quorum, so they're approved. Okay, so, I should probably make the, you know, I should probably make the scheduling of next meetings right on the agenda. I think it's implied in a motion to adjourn, but I'll try and improve our practice with that next time. But I don't know of any topics not reasonably anticipated. We're not on for next week. We're on for the week after. If anyone has a strong desire to meet next week, I think we've already decided not to do that. Does anybody want to have a different opinion?
I don't think the financial stuff will be ready. We need to give them 2 weeks.
I think you're right. So, good. All right, then the only thing remaining to do is the TDM of another vote to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So actually,
Yeah,
Rob, if I could
Patrick,
ask
go
a
ahead.
question about scheduling. We talked about 10/19, definitely a meeting, kind of preliminarily 10/26 if we need it, 11/2 maybe if we need it. Do we have like a consensus on? I mean, I know for my view, this navigation bylaw citizens petition, that's going to require some time. That's going to be definitely a good portion of a meeting for us, have them in. We're probably going to want to hear about what happens at the public forum on the night we're meeting, October 19th, maybe even watch that ourselves afterwards. Hopefully it'll be taped on YouTube. But that's definitely a portion of the meeting. We might have some of these financial and other warrant articles that kick over, questions are asked, come back with more information and data. I don't know. I don't know if we have more clarity now. It just sounds like we probably have at least one more full meeting, beyond 10/19. Maybe.
Oh, I think that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, maybe by the end of the meeting on 10/19, we know whether it makes sense to go forward with 10/26 or maybe just kick to 11/2. And
I think we can,
I know that's the eve of the printing, but
I have two thoughts about that. One is we should probably keep them both, on our personal calendars. And at the end of the meeting on the 19th, I think you're right. We have a conversation, it makes sense that meeting on the 26th. I bet it will, but you're right. Information flows can affect that and all kinds of other things. We could meet on the 2nd if we need it. And if there is an article that's just not ripe for consideration, we can defer our recommendation to the special town meeting and have a meeting in November to flesh that out. It's not
Right.
best practice, but it happens, regularly. So,
Okay.
so we'll definitely meet on the 19th. We'll keep the 26th penciled in, the 2nd penciled in perhaps a little bit more faintly. And we'll just have this conversation at the end of each of those meetings to make sure that we're comfortable, everybody's comfortable with, that we're getting our job done. Does that work for you? So
works for me.
awesome. Anybody else have any thoughts about meetings? I think Patrick's pretty much spot on. All right. Anything else? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain everybody's favorite motion.
I'll move to adjourn at 8:16.
Very good. Second,
Second,
Mary, vote, Gina Stino.
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
All right.
Mary McGoldrick,
aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman. I too am an aye. 6 minutes late, but that's not so bad. Chris, thanks. Jennifer, it was nice to meet you.